Hi, Paulie here. So, way back in the day, a cool little thing came out in a white box, and it was a skirmish system. It was called Warhammer. I rather liked first edition Warhammer. It had ants and bees and samurai riding giant bottle rockets, and it was funny. Later on, it became what it is. There are problems for very old school miniatures players, of which I am one, with that company, because there was some weird political stuff that they used to do. So I'm not much of a person for the actual Citadel miniatures universe, but many of my friends, this was what they adored, and of course many young players. So out from this, of course, came a role-playing game. So the Warhammer role-playing game was extremely popular in its day, and it had some really interesting mechanisms actually, and it built on this whole old world setting that they had. Those people who are connoisseurs of that system tell me that second edition was the best. First one was a bit clunky and had some errors, and they expanded it for the second one, so it had a lot more options and got rid of some of the rule clunk. As they went on to later versions, they added in extraneous material and so on, and it got somewhat lost. Now, some guys came in and they've done what is a love letter to the second edition of that game. And this is Zweihander. So you can see this is a monstrous beast of a thing, and extensively sort of illustrated all the way through. And it has kept the whole Warhammer look to the artwork, that kind of interesting scrappy sort of pen and ink style that was used. Really is a love letter to that game. Now, this no sooner came out than a Warhammer role-playing game was re-released, and that's very shiny and it's very glitzy and so on. Why would you be interested in Zweihander rather than the official release? As I said, this is second edition back again, whereas the new version has moved on from the older editions and has essentially put in a lot more material, and so it is its own thing. So these have diverged, but this is Warhammer. So this is essentially the old world that you loved. It's Skaven, it's orcs, it's dwarves, all this sort of thing. In fact, we've got Skaven all over the covers. So what this game is, it's a percentage system that is set in a world that is based probably around sort of, I would say, the 1560s. It's some puffed and slashed clothing. There are arquebuses, there are pistols. They're a bit rare in this, but you know, they are around. It's rapiers and mangaushes. It's Zweihanders. It's all that sort of thing. It's kind of a grungy world. It's kind of This isn't elves strumming lutes and blossoms drifting from trees. This is grotty streets, this is witch burners and horrible chaos things trying to mutate everybody and, you know, gnaw on their souls for din-dins. So, a grungy world. And yeah, you either like that or you don't. But it does make a refreshing change from most people's settings. What they've done with their system here. So, percent old dice. Now, when you're rolling, you've got your skills, you're trying to roll under your skills. If your dice come up with matched numbers, 55, 77, 22, this is when you're getting fumbles or critical hits. If you roll doubles and it's a skill pass, then it's a critical skill pass, so you get to do extra damage, you'll get to go the extra mile. If it's doubles and it's a skill failure, then something has gone wrong. You tried to pick the lock and you busted the damn thing, or you tried to sneak past the guard and bang, you kicked a bucket and everyone, you know, cats turn and look at you and spotlight's gone and hello money. So, all right, we've got this sort of, it's a very simple mechanism there. Now, the fun in the good old second edition is kept here. What you have is a series of professions. As a starting character, you choose, or in this case, they've got a random chart so you can roll, what your essential core stream is going to be. Are you going to be a citizen, a fightery sort, an apprentice to something? There's a general chart, and then there's sort of a series of very specific lifestyles that you can pick from this, and you can go through, you can have a shop, and each of these has a list of skills that you'll be able to get as this character, and a series of very specific bonuses that you'll be able to work up to. So the idea is, say I start off and, you know, I am a commoner, and they roll and I say, right, well, I'm going to be a rat catcher. Fantastic. You have a series of different things that you will purchase, and as part of your starting character you get experience that will probably take you out of your base level profession. As you fill up all those boxes, and as you take your different skills and so on as your experience allows, you are going to have to start to look for what you're going to progress onto from your basic profession. There are intermediate ones that you can choose, and these are channeled a little bit because you've come from one sort of profession. You can go into an array of other professions that it allows for you. You're going to now shop for what that's going to be. So I've gone from a thief, now I want to be a tomb robber, or I've gone from being like a thug, now I'm wanting to actually go off and be a highway robber. So, all right. And this gives you a new professional line with new skills that you're going to be able to develop through your experience, new bonuses and new special attributes you're going to be able to get. When that finally fills out, and that will be the bulk of your game, you'll go on to your advanced level profession. So if you've started off as like a magic user's apprentice or something, and then you've ended up as a magic user, now the advanced ones, or where you're actually having to really narrow it down, now you're getting quite powerful because you've got some really good skills behind you. But again, you fill out all these different skill boxes, and this is where your thing, this is how you will go. You'll progress through these things. Now, back in the day, of course, Warhammer had series of miniatures that they were selling. So, oh yes, I want this particular skill line. You could buy them in a box. That's kind of where the motivation for that came from. But it's actually kind of nice. It's an interesting blend between an all-out skill system and a character class system. It's an interesting agreement between both of those systems to work together, and it does give you a feel of actually kind of progressing through, you know, a life path. It's logical what I've done, and I've moved from this to this, and it's actually kind of nice. So as a compromise between the two different great branches of fantasy role playing, I think Warhammer and, you know, Zweihander deserve definite kudos for that. So you have a ton of skills in here that you can take, obviously. You've got a ton of extra sort of little powers that you can get as a different character professions that you can pick. This thing also excels in its grimoire. It's got this huge grimoire in here, and you've got many different branches of magic. Each of these is unique. Each of these works to do its own things in its own way, and has a great colourful grimoire of things. So fantastic job for doing diversity of magic and so on. If you're going to do a magic using class, that's great. There's also a lot of space in this huge volume dedicated, of course, to the forces of chaos and how chaos can mutate you, and how some of these magics and so on, as you start doing rotten things, chaos starts to get its claws into you, and it can start to essentially turn you into an agent of chaos. And you'll eventually, if you go down that path, yes, you can get some great, you can get tentacle arms and you can get some great powers and whatever, but eventually you'll be an on-play character. You'll end up as a slave to chaos, which you don't want. But the whole thing is designed to give you this kind of German 1560s Albrecht Dürer kind of setting, and it works phenomenally well with that. You've got a great array of creatures. Now again, creatures and monsters and so on are quite simply expressed because it retains those Warhammery roots. So we're looking at what your defense factors are, what your number of attacks are, what your number of hits are, and so on. So it's quite easy to prepare monsters and foes, which is a bonus for like a skill-based role-playing game, because sometimes when you have to create every single thing you meet up as quite a complex character, that can slow down play unless you've got a lot of pre-done resources. So for these, pretty simple strip system that allows you to just create Skaven and create orcs and these sorts of things. So it is an easy game to run as a killie game. The other thing is, of course, this is not a high magical setting where you've got like D&D healing spells flickering back and forth. So it's got this grungy combat system with these critical hit charts, and you can lose limbs and fingers and get horrible facial scars, and there's no amount to magically wave their hand and, you know, make it all go away. So you might end up with, you know, hook hands and peg legs, and they just kind of like that. It's about a grungy system. Doesn't mean you're not a character anymore. It just means that your character now, like, you get negatives if you're trying to run, or, you know, your picklocking days have become a little bit strange. But they keep that grungy feel, and that whole lack of the airy-fairy healing spells and so on is a big part of that. So look, there is there's a big supplement to this called Mangaush, which brings in a lot more professions that you can take, and it brings in more options for things. It's well worthwhile if you're getting into this. Get hold of Mangaush as well. Their production values are really, really good in this. I mean, this has been a meticulous piece of work. It's been clearly a work of love, and by people who took a look at first and second edition of the game they wished to help recreate, took a look at the later editions and decided to cherry pick some elements and to abandon others and put in their own. This is a great piece of work. If you used to love Warhammer role-playing, but you felt it kind of left you behind a bit, and particularly they keep messing with their setting to try and sort of sell different figure lines and so on. This is the old setting that you loved. This is the core rule mechanisms that you loved. You can take all of those old Warhammer fantasy roleplay adventures that were done. This system will run them all. And you can find all of those on drive-through. It is actually still compatible with new material that is coming out for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay as they bring out new adventures. You would definitely be able to use this system with them. They haven't drifted so far apart that the character stats and so on are completely different. But this retains that old world setting of classical Warhammer that so many people grew up and loved. So look, if you are a Warhammer fan, if you're a grungy fantasy setting fan, if you kind of prefer bits getting cut off and grungy streets and taverns where people, you know, hit each other in the teeth with their drinks, and where lots of people wear puffed and slashed clothing, where dwarves have mohawks and you know, and bother boots, where a main character doesn't look so much like Glorfindel, elven lord of the Shining Star, but looks a little bit more like a British football thug out on holiday, then this is definitely the game for you. Give it a look. It's up there on drive-through and Hearn, and it is it's a great read, and it's good to see it back. It's good to have this back. Go out and find it. Cheers.